In HBO's House of the Dragon, which takes place almost 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones, the Targaryen dynasty is in full power. However, as the prelude warns us, dragons and titles cannot save the Targaryens from themselves.
For he knew the cold truth. The only thing that could tear down the House of the Dragon was itself.
And what greater rivalry is there than a rivalry between old friends? The series revolves around the complicated relationship between the king's daughter, Rhaenyra Targaryen, and her childhood companion, Alicent Hightower. Rhaenyra and Alicent's opposite personalities are the sun and moon gravitational pull that makes their relationship the heart of the show's central conflict. Starting as each other's closest companions, Rhaenyra and Alicent must contend with their own position in a patriarchal society that view women as merely vessels for male dominion. Let's take a look at how each woman is shaped by their experiences with abusive men, desire, duty, and motherhood, which ultimately pits them against each other in a fearsome battle for the Iron Throne. When we first meet Rhaenyra and Alicent, they're only teenagers. Rhaenyra, the only child of King Viserys, is known as the realm's princess and prefers spending her afternoons on Dragonback rather than studying history. Second to dragons, Rhaenyra loves spending time with her best friend, Alicent, who is the daughter of Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King.
I want to fly with you on Dragonback, see the great wonders across the narrow sea and eat only cake.
You aren't worried about your position?
I like this position, it's quite comfortable.
Alicent and Rhaenyra's innocence in the first episode echoes the Garden of Eden motif as they lounge blissfully under the sacred godswood tree, ignorant of the serpents around them, or related to them, such as Alicent's father, Otto Hightower. When Rhaenyra's mother dies after a violent childbirth, Otto sees an opportunity to get closer to the Iron Throne.
I thought you might go to him, offer him comfort.
In his chambers?
You might wear one of your mother's dresses.
It's important to note this is the first time we see Alicent wearing the color green, which is the color of her house, but also a symbol of her future division from Rhaenyra. Alicent, bound by expectations of familial duty, reluctantly obeys her father's wishes, comforting Viserys behind Rhaenyra's back.
When my mother died, people only ever spoke to me in riddles. All I wanted was for someone to say that they were sorry for what happened to me. I'm very sorry, Your Grace.
This is the first point of demarcation for Alicent and Rhaenyra's relationship. The innocent days of their youth are gone as they're thrown into the dark terrain of womanhood, having to face what's to come.
The childbed is our battlefield. We must learn to face it with a stiff lip.
The violence of patriarchal rule bleeds into Rhaenyra's personal life when she learns her father sacrificed his wife to save the child, and if that's not tragic enough, the baby doesn't even survive. Otto Hightower isn't the only snake in the grass. Rhaenyra has a serpent relative of her own whispering in her ear, her uncle, Daemon Targaryen, who has been grooming Rhaenyra since she was a child.
Now, you and I both own a small piece of our ancestry.
While Rhaenyra's attraction to her uncle may be a product of her DNA, Targaryens have a long, incestuous history. Daemon is still a grown man manipulating a teenage girl. His penchant for carnage, lust, and power has a beguiling effect on Rhaenyra, who yearns to have the same freedom Daemon has as a man. House of the Dragon unfolds like a Shakespearean tragedy. The tragic hero is Rhaenyra, who Viserys names as his heir, a decision that is met with murmurings throughout the realm because placing a woman on the Iron Throne defies centuries of tradition. Like her descendant Daenerys Targaryen, ruling is not only Rhaenyra's birthright, but she also believes it's her destiny to protect Westeros from a secret prophecy that's been passed down through generations of Targaryen rulers.
If the world of men is to survive, a Targaryen must be seated on the Iron Throne. A king or queen, strong enough to unite the realm against the cold.
Sound familiar? It will be another 200 years before those events come to pass, and the prince that was promised, aka Jon Snow and the Starks, helped Daenerys defeat the Night King. But Rhaenyra doesn't know that, and the weight of destiny is a heavy burden that solidifies her ambition to be queen. The most crucial difference between Alicent and Rhaenyra is their understanding of and relationship to desire and duty. In the medieval fantasy world of Game of Thrones, and let's face it, our own world, women have historically had to sacrifice their desires at the expense of duty, or vice versa. Rhaenyra has always seen the hypocrisy in these rules and uses her body with more agency than Alicent from the very first shot of her riding Syrax. She seeks freedom from the confines of her gender, and her royal position grants her protections that Alicent can't help but envy. The fact that Rhaenyra gets to choose who she'll marry is a privilege that many women, like Alicent, are never afforded.
Those men and boys don't fawn over me. They only want my name and my Valyrian blood for their offspring.
I think it's rather romantic.
But despite Rhaenyra having a say in her future, she abhors the prospect of being a man's property when she marries, and her value being reduced to her ability to have children. Rhaenyra does not wish to become Alicent, or worse, suffer her own mother's fate.
How romantic it must be to get imprisoned in a castle and made to squeeze out heirs.
That's why Daemon's rebellious influence has such a hold over Rhaenyra. He represents unmitigated desire without the need for sacrifice or loss of power, which sounds pretty great, especially if you're a teen girl with a dragon. But is it possible for Rhaenyra, a woman of Westeros and heir to the Iron Throne, to live as freely as Daemon does? Rhaenyra is not naive to the ways of the world or the responsibility of her position, but she still rattles against society's double standards.
Were I born a man, I could bear Tim if I wanted. I could father a dozen bastards, and no one in your court would blink an eye.
After all, she was the first woman in Westerosi history to succeed the crown, and that may have created a superiority complex that makes her believe she can bend the rules of society to her will.
But many of the small folk like to believe that as a male, Aegon should be the heir.
Their wants are of no consequence.
The pair have very different views of sex as well. While Rhaenyra sees it as being about pleasure, Alicent just sees it as a means to an end.
The king has requested your presence. The hour is quite late.
But Rhaenyra's pursuit of pleasure also comes with a side of danger. Her not-so-private tryst with her uncle Daemon and hookup with Sir Criston have almost biblical consequences when one of Otto Hightower's spies sees her leaving the brothel. Otto informs the king, suggesting that Rhaenyra's virtue has been compromised by Daemon, which can discredit her claim to the throne. Enraged and feeling betrayed, Alicent confronts Rhaenyra, and their standoff feels like an old lover's quarrel.
Your father accused me of something.
That you Daemon in a pleasure house.
This is a vile accusation.
There is something tragic about this scene, a sense of something breaking that can never be repaired when Rhaenyra chooses to lie rather than tell Alicent the truth about what really happened.
I swear this to you, upon the memory of my mother.
It was foolish of you to place yourself in a position where your virtue could even come into question.
From this moment forth, Rhaenyra learns that just because she's the most powerful woman in the realm, that doesn't mean she can act with impunity. As her father Viserys reminds her, there is too much at stake.
From my blood come the prince that was promised, and his will be the song of ice and fire.
The responsibility I have handed to you, 'tis larger than the throne. The king, 'tis larger than you and your desires.
Viserys decides to marry her off to his cousin's son, Rhaenyra Velaryon, a politically advantageous match that will hopefully keep the rumors at bay.
You will wed Sir Rhaenyra Velaryon, and you will do so without protest.
The son of the sea snake, so I can be a remedy for your political headaches.
The shock and scandal of Rhaenyra and Daemon's night together in the brothel resulted in Viserys firing Otto as Hand of the King, leaving Alicent more isolated than she's ever been before. It also makes her easier to manipulate.
The king will die. It may be months or years, but he'll not live to be an old man. And if Rhaenyra succeeds him, war will follow. The time is coming, Alicent. Either you prepare Aegon to rule, or you cleave to Rhaenyra and pray for her mercy.
This is also the pivotal moment she forms an alliance with the scheming Lord Larys, who is undoubtedly the Littlefinger archetype in House of the Dragon, pulling everyone's strings from the shadows.
An outsider among the natives.
Lord Larys.
Rhaenyra's political engagement to Rhaenor rouses Sir Criston to declare his wish to marry her and run away together. But Rhaenyra rejects him and reinstates her duties to the crown.
So you want me to be your whore?
I want us to continue as we began with you as my sworn protector.
She fails to see the intensity in Criston's heartbreak and desperation. He has even less agency than Rhaenyra, and a lot more to lose. Sir Criston's vulnerability makes him more susceptible to Alicent's influence when she questions him about Rhaenyra's virtue, eliciting a startling confession that will finally turn Alicent to her father's side.
The beacon on the high tower. Do you know what color it glows when Old Town calls its banners to war?
Green.
Alicent's green dress symbolizes her shifting loyalties to protect her family, no matter the cost. Her fashionably late entrance, which stuns the room into silence, is a display of her power and newfound agency as queen. Long gone is the girl who preferred to hide in the sept and anxiously please her elders. Now, Alicent is a woman ready to play a dangerous political game, and any feelings she has for her old companion Rhaenyra are now buried under a sheet of ice.
Congratulations, stepdaughter. What a blessing this is for you.
The wounds that Alicent and Rhaenyra inflicted on each other in their youth color their dynamic for the next decade. Alicent has become colder and more righteous, tasked with the responsibility of raising 3 children while her elderly husband Viserys is slowly dying. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra has just given birth to her 3rd son, except it's a known secret that none of Rhaenyra's sons are Laenor's, which infuriates Alicent.
The Queen has requested that the child be brought to her immediately.
I'll take him myself.
You should remain a bed princess.
Yes, I should. Help me dress.
Each woman is stuck in their patterns, with Rhaenyra choosing to take a lover, thinking it won't jeopardize her position, while Alicent, forever pious, has stayed bitterly faithful to a dying man.
To have one child like that is a mistake. To have 3 is an insult. To the throne, to you, to House Velaryon and the match you battled so hard to make for her.
On top of that, Prince Aegon has some concerning habits and doesn't understand the gravity of his position as the king's firstborn son.
You are the king's firstborn son. And what they know, what everyone in the realm knows, in their blood and in their bones, is that one day you will be our king.
After a public altercation between Sir Criston and Sir Harwin, the threat of Rhaenyra's illegitimate sons and her claim as heir sets off a deadly chain of events.
Your interest in the Princeling's training is quite unusual, Commander. Most men would only have that kind of devotion toward a cousin, or a brother, or a son.
However, Rhaenyra remains steadfast in her belief that her sons are rightful heirs because they have Targaryen blood.
Am I a bastard?
You are a Targaryen. That's all that matters.
Desire and loyalty are entangled again when Sir Harwin's brother, Lord Larys, orchestrates the murder of his brother and father to prove his loyalty to Alicent, bringing Otto Hightower back as Hand of the King.
The Queen makes a wish. What servant of the realm would not strive to fulfill it? I assume you will write to your father now?
Larys, I did not wish for this.
Across the narrow sea, Daemon Targaryen loses his wife, Rhaena Velaryon, who chooses to end her life with her unborn child after a violent labor.
Rhaena!
Childbirth and death is a recurring motif in House of the Dragon, reminding us that those who have the power to create life can also take it away, and the very thing that grants women safety, marriage and motherhood, can also easily destroy them. Rhaena's tragic death brings Daemon and his 2 daughters, including Rhaena's massive dragon, Vhagar, back to Westeros, where everyone has gathered for Rhaena's funeral. After 10 years apart, Rhaenyra and Daemon bond over their mutual grief and rekindle their spark.
Rhaenyra.
I'm no longer a child.
The same night, Alicent's youngest son, Aemond, claims Vhagar as his dragon, which results in a violent altercation between Rhaenyra's sons, leaving Aemond blind in one eye.
You will die screaming in flames just as your father did! Bastards!
My father's still alive!
He doesn't know, does he?
All strong.
Which brings us to the main showdown between Alicent and Rhaenyra. Enraged, Alicent demands that Lucerys be punished for hurting Aemond, but when Viserys defends Rhaenyra's sons and demands peace between the families, she loses her composure.
That is insufficient. Aemond has been damaged permanently. My king, goodwill cannot make him whole. I shall have one of her son's eyes in return.
The intimacy of this violent exchange symbolizes how entwined Alicent and Rhaenyra are, as well as how entwined their children will become in the battle for the Iron Throne. The fate of Westeros, which for centuries has been ruled by men, lies between these two women and the weight of their shared history.
Exhausting, wasn't it? Hiding beneath the cloak of your own righteousness. But now they see you as you are.
The imagery of Rhaenyra's blood and the flames behind them foreshadow the war brewing between these two factions of Targaryens. Both sides believe they're right and will stop at nothing to achieve their goals.
We play an ugly game. And now, for the first time, I see that you have the determination to win it.
Rhaenyra.
You see her for what she is.
This includes Rhaenyra and Daemon faking Laenor's death so they could marry each other and strengthen Rhaenyra and her children's claim to the Iron Throne when the time comes. From this moment forward, Rhaenyra only wears the colors of her house, black and red, symbolizing her embrace of the Targaryens' old ways and her divorce from the other Targaryen faction that is controlled by Alicent and the Hightowers. The season ends 6 years later with Rhaenyra and Alicent seeing each other for the first time since their last nearly fatal encounter. Viserys is on his last days, and for years, Alicent and her father Otto have been ruling the kingdom.
It is they who keep him addled on milk of the poppy while the Hightowers warm his throne.
Rhaenyra, if you would see him without it, almost blind with suffering.
Aegon is a young man now and has become more licentious and violent since his youth. When Alicent learns that he assaulted a maid, she consoles the girl with a disturbing blend of sympathy and manipulation.
I believe you. You do? But what I worry about is what others might believe.
At the end of the day, she'll protect Aegon and his claim to the throne, even if her son's behavior disgusts her. In a sense, Alicent's character has some parallels with Cersei from Game of Thrones, another mother who would do anything for her children, including silencing women they've hurt.
Joffrey will show you no such devotion. You may never love the king, but you will love his children.
Rhaenyra, Daemon, and their children have returned to King's Landing to defend her son Lucerys as heir of Driftmark, which is being challenged by Corlys Velaryon's brother.
The true, unimpeachable blood of House Velaryon runs through my veins.
As it does in my sons, the offspring of Laenor Velaryon.
King Viserys, who resembles a Nightwalker more than a man in his dying days, musters the last of his strength and declares his support for Lucerys, which by extension solidifies Rhaenyra as heir to the Iron Throne.
I hereby reaffirm Prince Lucerys of House Velaryon is heir to Driftmark.
The family gathers for dinner later that night, and it's the first time in years Rhaenyra, Alicent, and their children have shared a meal together. Both women even speak to each other with affection, remembering the closeness of their youth.
She has tended to him with unfailing devotion, love, and honor. And for that, she has my gratitude.
For one night, it seems almost possible that old wounds could actually heal, and Rhaenyra and Alicent could unite again.
You've only just arrived.
Let me see the children home. I'll, return on Dragonback.
The king and I would both like that.
But of course, House of the Dragon reminds us that this story is a tragedy, and the seeds of destruction were planted a long time ago. That night, Viserys passes away, but not before Alicent hears him mumbling Aegon the Conqueror's prophecy. And of course, she mistakes Aegon for their son, believing that Viserys' dying wish is to see Aegon on the throne, not Rhaenyra.
The prince that was promised.
Prince Aegon.
To unite the realm against the cold and the dark.
As Alicent grimly prepares for her son's succession, she learns that her father Otto and the small council have been planning this day for years behind her back.
Am I to understand that members of the small council have been planning secretly to install my son without me?
When Rhaenyra learns that Aegon has been crowned, she suffers a miscarriage, and Daemon, instead of comforting his wife, is already making plans for war.
Conscript the Dragon Keepers, they're capable fighters. Waste no time.
It will be done, my prince.
However, both Alicent and Rhaenyra are mothers who don't wish to see their children, or even each other, harmed.
The king did not wish for the murder of his daughter. He loved her. I will not have you deny this.
But it's clear that neither Alicent nor Rhaenyra have any real control over the violent men in their lives, despite their effort to maintain their authority.
My father's dead. And he chose me as his successor. To defend the realm, not cast it headlong into war.
The relationship between Rhaenyra and Alicent is a tragic and multifaceted one, marked by friendship, political rivalry, personal tragedies, and ultimately a civil war known as the Dance of the Dragons. Season 2 will pit Rhaenyra and her supporters, the Blacks, against Alicent and her faction, the Greens. The Dance of the Dragons is not only a battle for the throne, but also a personal vendetta between two former companions turned bitter enemies. Their story is a poignant exploration of how power, ambition, and patriarchal values can corrupt even the deepest of bonds, and how the personal and political are inextricably linked in the world of Westeros. So, let us know, in Season 2, which side will you be on? That's the take. Click here to watch a video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. And make sure to subscribe to our Patreon for exclusive new videos.